From 1.2 million players at its peak to losing more than half of that by 2026, Forsaken had everything. Now nobody can agree on what went wrong. Some people say the game is dying, some say it's fine, some blame the developers. But here's the thing, all of those people are kind of right, and that's exactly the problem. When Forsaken launched in December 2024, it was genuinely loved. The concept is simple. A group of survivors against a single killer. Both sides have abilities. The survivors are trying to complete objectives before time runs out, while the killer hunts them down one by one. It is not a new idea, but execution matters. And in the beginning, Forsaken executed it well. The matches felt tense in a way most Roblox games never manage. The community grew fast, and not just in numbers. People were invested. They cared about the lore. They debated strategies. They made videos. For a stretch of 2025, Forsaken felt like an event. By November 2025, 1.2 million players were in the game at the same time. One of the highest concurrent player counts in Roblox history for a game of its type. And then, quietly, the cracks started to show. The first crack was balancing, and it was not subtle. Here is the simplest way to explain what went wrong. Playing as the killer stopped being fun. When survivors played together and actually knew what they were doing, the killer was not just at a disadvantage. They were being stalled, harassed, blocked, and worn down while objectives got completed in the background. Matches started to feel like a one-sided beatdown. The problem ran deeper than just one character being too strong. The entire design leaned in a direction that rewarded survivors for working together while leaving killers with very few answers. A new player picking up the starter killer for the first time would get absolutely destroyed by any group of experienced survivors playing as a team. And experienced players running the strongest survivors made it even worse. The gap between a well-coordinated survivor team and a killer was wide enough that it stopped feeling like a game and started feeling like a chore. The developers kept making changes, but those changes kept addressing the edges of the problem without touching the center of it. Nothing that actually shifted the balance in a meaningful way. The community noticed.
Forsaken, the second anybody on the team is competent, you've lost.
You and everyone else know that this game is severely survivor-sided.
And frustration built slowly, the way it always does when players feel like their feedback is landing in an empty room. But here is what made it worse. New players had no idea any of this was happening until they were already in the middle of it. Forsaken throws you in and says good luck. There is no tutorial. There is no explanation of how abilities work, what status effects do, or why the timer behaves the way it does. For a game that had been played billions of times, the complete absence of any onboarding is almost hard to believe. And when your match experience is consistently frustrating without any understanding of why, players do not stick around to figure it out. They quietly stop showing up. This is the part that does not get talked about enough. Player counts do not collapse because people get angry. They collapse because people lose interest. The gameplay loop had another problem underneath all of this. There was only one objective for survivors to do in every match. One objective, repeated forever. It is a decent objective. But decent and forever is not a great combination. When players started dreading it rather than enjoying it, that was the game telling you something important about what it was missing. The content pipeline made it worse. Killers got teased and delayed. Skins got redesigned, then redesigned again, then delayed. Promises sat for months without movement. Every delay is a small thing on its own, but they accumulate. And what they accumulate into is a community that stops trusting that things are coming. That erosion of trust is quiet. You do not notice it happening until you look at the numbers. The once great feeling, it fades. When Forsaken launched, it felt new. The atmosphere, the tension, the sense that something genuinely impressive was being built on a platform that usually settles for less. That feeling is what drove 1.2 million people into the same game at the same time. But freshness has a shelf life, and when it wore off, There was not enough depth underneath it to keep everyone engaged at the same level. That is not a death sentence. It is a diagnosis. Because the feeling fading is not unique to Forsaken. Every game that ever mattered went through it. The question was never whether the feeling would fade. The question is always what is left when it does. And that is where Forsaken's story gets more interesting than most. Because here is what makes Forsaken different from every other Roblox game that peaked and disappeared. The foundation is still there. The lore is rich. The community is enormous. The developers are still building. New content is coming. Chapter 3 has been positioned as a genuine overhaul, not just another update cycle. A development log, a roadmap, structural changes. The community wants to believe it, and they should. Cautiously. The players who fell in love with Forsaken in 2025 fell in love with a feeling, the dread, the atmosphere, the sense that something impressive was happening in a place where impressive things are rare. That feeling is harder to rebuild than a player count. You can fix the balancing, you can add content, you can address every complaint on the list. What you cannot manufacture is the moment when a community decides something matters. And that is exactly what makes Chapter 3 so significant. Not because it is another update, but because it is the first time the developers publicly acknowledge that something needed to change at a structural level. A development log, a roadmap, structural changes. That is not nothing. That is a team saying we hear you. And unlike most declining games, they actually followed through with something. And that community still exists. The debates are still happening. The videos are still being made. People are not talking about Forsaken the way they talk about games that are already gone. They are talking about it the way people talk about something they still care about. That matters more than the numbers do. A game without players is dead. A game with players who are frustrated but still showing up is just wounded. Those are very different things. Chapter 3 was supposed to be the answer to every question being asked. New content, new killers. A roadmap, structural changes. The developers did the work, but the one thing the community needed most, balanced matches, a game that feels fair on both sides, is still not there. Survivors still have it easy. Killers are still at a disadvantage. The feeling that drove 1.2 million people into the same game at the same time has not come back. The audience is still there. The interest is still there. But a game that does not fix its foundation does not get to keep its community forever. Forsaken had everything. The question now is whether it still can, or if it will fall for good.